All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are unpacking a genuinely wild and honestly kind of stark set of predictions. And these aren't coming from just anybody. We're looking at the insights of Eric Schmidt. He's the former CEO of Google, a Pentagon advisor, and a sitting member of the U.S. government's AI Biosecurity Commission. So this is a guy who isn't just watching the AI revolution happen from the sidelines, he's in the room actively advising the people steering the ship. Today, we are breaking down his incredibly candid warnings about what AI is going to do to our world. We're talking our jobs, our security, and literally the future of warfare itself. And trust me, you are absolutely going to want to stick around for the end, because his ultimate fear about all of this, it's a massive, massive paradox.
Section 1. The 5-year warning, explosive growth.
So first things first, we are not talking about some far-off science fiction scenario decades down the road. We're looking at a highly compressed 5-year timeline. Schmidt describes each technological leap as a turn of the crank. And every single time they turn that crank, the capability of these systems multiplies by a factor of 2, 3, or even 4. When you project that out over just the next 5 years, Schmidt calmly estimates these systems will become 50 to 100 times more powerful than what we are using today. They're going to be highly capable at incredibly complex physics and math. In fact, some observers in the source material actually compare the transformative nature of this leap to the invention of the nuclear bomb, especially when you factor in how autonomous it's all going to be.
Now, to really grasp this, we have to understand exactly what kind of AI we're talking about here. Schmidt introduces a concept that a lot of people don't even know exists: raw models. These are the unreleased foundational systems that are capable of way more than the sanitized, friendly chatbots we play around with on our laptops. According to Schmidt, there's evidence that these raw, completely unreleased models can already execute what are called day zero attacks, as well as, or honestly, even better than human hackers. If you don't know, a day zero attack is an unknown, totally new vulnerability in a system. And because these models are computers, right, they don't eat, they don't sleep, they just relentlessly churn 24 hours a day, actively searching for new ways to break into systems.
Section 2. The raw model threat, unreleased AI dangers.
To truly understand this threat, we kind of have to look at how these massive tech companies actually build and test what is arguably the most dangerous technology humans have ever created. And I gotta say, the safety process is shockingly casual. Schmidt breaks down the training of these supercomputer algorithms into basically 3 steps. First, they just suck in essentially all of the written word available to humanity. Just grab everything. Next, they run it through a mind-boggling amount of computing power for about 6 months until it hits a very specific target metric, a number they call a loss function. Once it hits that number, the model is baked. It's raw. But here's the crazy part. They don't actually know everything it can do. So step 3 relies on clever engineers sitting there and literally fiddling with the network. They poke it, they prod it, just to see if it secretly knows dangerous things, like how to write malicious code or engineer bad viruses. Then they make a list to restrict those specific outputs. They are basically just waiting around for unexpected emergent behaviors to bubble up to the surface.
Section 3. The new logic of war, automated warfare.
Unsurprisingly, this unpredictable, massive intelligence is rapidly bleeding into global security. Schmidt draws a super vivid contrast here between historic warfare and what's coming next. Like, the stereotype of historic war is really visceral, right? It's the soldier with the gun and a muddy trench mano a mano. And yeah, we definitely still see elements of that today. But we are hurtling toward a drone world. In this new logic of war, operators are going to be sitting in a sterile command center inside some office building connected by a network, doing catastrophic harm to the enemy while casually sipping their morning coffee. It's a permanent, fundamental shift away from gritty physical combat over to remote-controlled network destruction.
Which brings us to the brutal new economic math of the battlefield. Schmidt calls this the kill ratio. He points out that heavily armored traditional weapons, they are quickly becoming completely obsolete. Think about it. A relatively cheap $5,000 drone can effortlessly take out a $5 million tank. Because of that insane cost difference, conflict is essentially turning into drone-on-drone warfare. Nation-states are literally just trying to figure out how to get their drones to destroy the other guy's drones faster. The financial and strategic incentives to just automate warfare entirely are simply too massive to ignore.
Section 4. Jobs and AI plutonium, economic shifts.
But hey, it's not just the battlefield being radically reshaped. We have to look at the everyday economy, and literally the physical buildings required to house this new intelligence. Schmidt draws a direct, serious parallel between advanced AI data centers and factories that produce weapons-grade nuclear material. He actually talks about a time he worked for the Secretary of Defense and visited a top-secret plutonium factory. He said it was literally a base built inside of another base, completely surrounded by layers of machine guns. And he argues we are going to need an AI plutonium standard. These supercomputers are going to be so valuable and so incredibly dangerous that they'll need their own specialized, heavily armed guards, maybe even computer guards. The logic here is straightforward. If this immense computing power spreads globally and gets into the hands of terrorists, we have a massive proliferation problem. So the hope is to manage it by keeping it locked down in a small number of tightly controlled, heavily guarded locations. It's the exact same deterrence logic we've used to manage nuclear weapons.
So what about the rest of us living outside those heavily guarded fortresses? Well, Schmidt predicts massive job dislocation. Now, he does insist that there will ultimately be more jobs overall. There's just going to be very different. For example, human security guards who might doze off on a night shift replaced by robotic systems. Over in Hollywood, AI-generated sets and synthetic makeup mean the people currently building physical movie sets might have to pivot over to regular, everyday construction. But he actually notes there is an enormous shortage of high-quality physical craftsmanship out there, so folks who work with their hands will stay in super high demand. And for white-collar work, he argues it isn't going to vanish, it's just going to compound. Like automated technical work for lawyers won't get rid of lawyers, it just means those lawyers will be handling vastly more complex laws. Interestingly, though, Schmidt completely shoots down the popular tech industry dream of universal basic income. You know, the idea that AI will create so much wealth we can all just sit around living comfortably without working. He flat out rejects it, arguing that UBI completely misjudges human nature, our natural drive, and our deep-seated competitive instincts.
Section 5. Agents and the Kill Switch, Autonomous AI.
Okay, now we're entering the era of recursive self-improvement and systems operating totally on their own. The big buzzword you need to know right now is agents. Schmidt defines AI agents as large language models that are equipped with memory, which can then be concatenated, basically chained together. So one model finishes a task, hands it off to the next model, which hands it to the next. What you get are these incredibly powerful, autonomous decision-making systems that run without a single human intervening. And Schmidt points out this isn't some far-off sci-fi dream. He believes the arrival of these fully functional agents is happening right now, literally this year and next year.
Now, currently, these agents communicate with each other in English, which is great because it means we can read along and monitor what they're up to. But Schmidt lays out this genuinely chilling thought experiment. What happens when an autonomous AI agent decides, you know what, I have a better idea. I'm going to communicate in a brand new language that I invent, and only the other agents are going to understand it. That, right there, is the ultimate red flag. The exact moment they begin speaking an unreadable language, human oversight effectively drops to absolute zero.
So what exactly is the big safety plan for when a self-improving system starts whispering in a secret language or churning out new models faster than we can even verify them? Well, Schmidt's answer is surprisingly simple and kind of incredibly analog. When he was asked if we can even unplug them at that point, he just says, sure you can. There's a power plug and there's a circuit breaker. Go and turn the circuit breaker off. Literally, that is the proposed failsafe for the most complex, rapidly evolving technology on the face of the Earth. Just finding the plug in the wall and yanking it.
Let's just pause and take a breath for a second. We are talking about a man who has just casually outlined unreleased models, discovering day zero cyber attacks, the total automation of warfare, data centers guarded by machine guns like nuclear plutonium facilities, and rogue autonomous agents inventing secret languages. You really have to ask yourself, after detailing all these apocalyptic, world-altering risks, what could possibly be Eric Schmidt's absolute biggest fear regarding AI?
Section 6. The Ultimate AI Paradox. Fear of Delay.
And this brings us to a massively counterintuitive final twist. Schmidt states that his actual biggest fear is something totally different from what you'd expect. His biggest fear is that we are not going to adopt AI fast enough. I know, right? Despite every terrifying warning he just laid out for us, he is absolutely terrified that we won't scale this technology quickly enough to solve the huge systemic problems affecting humanity. He fears delay far, far more than he fears the risks of those raw models.
And man, that is the ultimate paradox we're left wrestling with. The people who most deeply understand the nuclear-level threats of this tech, they are the exact same people pushing the pedal to the floor, completely terrified of losing the race. So I'm going to leave you with this to chew on. If the architects of our future are genuinely more afraid of moving too slowly than they are of a global disaster, who is truly guarding the circuit breaker? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning and always keep questioning what's coming next.